Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources, articles, research, announcements, and really dig in.
Yeah, we sift through it all to pull out the key bits of knowledge, the important insights, all specifically for you.
Think of it as getting you straight to the good stuff, the facts and context you need, without you having to wade through everything yourself.
Exactly. We go right to the source material.
And today, we're focusing this deep dive specifically for our UPSC aspirant listeners. This is our look at the current affairs for June 4th, 2025. Part 1.
We've got quite a mix today. Topics from recent news covering, well, everything from international finance and tech to environmental science, a bit of history, even some wildlife news.
Now, some of these topics might ring a bell. Maybe you've come across them in your studies already.
And if so, great. Think of this as a chance for some solid revision, just locking in those key details.
And for others, well, get ready for some fresh insights. It's all about building that bigger picture.
That interconnected understanding you really need.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We'll dive into the source material together, see what jumps out. First up, there's some pretty significant news about the Asian Development Bank.
Right. The big headline was the ADB president making an announcement about a huge initiative for India. We're talking urban infrastructure transformation.
Huge is right. The figure mentioned is $10 billion over 5 years.
$10 billion. That's a serious commitment aimed squarely at India's cities. Really shows the scale of what's planned.
Definitely. So the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, remind us, what exactly is it?
Okay, so it's a multilateral development bank, sort of like a regional version of the World Bank, but focused on Asia and the Pacific. It was established way back December 19th, 1966.
And its main job?
It's the principal international development finance institution for the Asia-Pacific region. That's its patch.
And they have a vision, a guiding principle.
Yeah, the vision is for a prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia-Pacific. And crucially, their big mission is about eradicating extreme poverty in the region.
Right. Headquarters are in Manila, Philippines. Okay. Now, India's role in this. That $10 billion sounds big, but where does India actually stand with the ADB overall?
This is a really key point, actually. India ranks first among all the developing member countries when it comes to financial commitments from the ADB.
First? Wow, okay. Ahead of everyone else.
Yep. India accounts for about 14% of the total financial commitments. Just for context, that's followed by China, then Bangladesh, the Philippines, Pakistan. So India's relationship with the ADB is pretty significant.
Shows India's importance and ongoing needs too, I guess. So how do they actually help? Is it just about loans?
No, it's more than just loans, although that's definitely a big part. They also provide grants, technical assistance, and even equity investments.
And who gets this support?
It goes to the developing member countries themselves, but also to the private sector and, importantly, to public-private partnerships, or PPPs. The aim is always promoting social and economic development.
And they try to, maximize the impact of their money?
Absolutely. They do that through policy dialogues, advising governments, and they're big on mobilizing more funds through co-financing.
Co-financing.
Yeah, basically bringing in other funders alongside their own money. Think official aid agencies, commercial banks, export credit sources. It stretches their own resources further.
Makes sense. What specific areas do they tend to focus on?
The sources list 6 main areas, and they line up pretty well with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So you've got education, health, transport, energy, finance, and climate change.
Okay, so that $10 billion for urban infrastructure fits neatly into transport, energy, maybe even climate adaptation in cities.
Exactly. And they also work with NGOs and private companies, especially on things like improving capital markets and business infrastructure.
Interesting. Let's talk about the bank itself, its members, how it's run. How many countries are involved now?
It started small, just 31 members in 66. Now it's up to 69 members. That's 49 from the Asia-Pacific region and 20 from outside the region.
And the structure. How are decisions made?
Well, the top body is the Board of Governors. Each member country gets one representative on that. This board then elects a smaller resident board of directors.
Okay.
That board has 12 members, 8 represent the regional countries, and 4 represent the non-regional ones.
And the president. Who runs the show day to day?
The president is elected by the Board of Governors for a 5-year term. They chair the board of directors and are basically the CEO. Now, here's that really interesting factoid.
Go on.
Every single president of the ADB since it started has been from Japan.
Every single one. Really? Why is that?
It ties back to the founding. Japan played a major role in setting up the bank. and it remains the largest single shareholder.
Ah, okay. So it connects to the voting power.
Exactly. It's like the World Bank in that respect. They use a weighted voting system.
Hmm.
Your voting power depends on how much capital you've subscribed, basically, how much money you've put in.
And who has the biggest say then?
The top shareholders are Japan and the United States. They actually hold equal shares, 15.6% each. Then comes China with 6.4%, India very close behind at 6.3%, and Australia with 5.8%. So Japan and the U.S. together have, well, significant influence.
Where does all the money for their projects actually come from?
Several sources. They raise a lot of capital on international bond markets. Member countries also make direct contributions. Then there are retained earnings from their own lending activities and, of course, the repayments they get on the loans they've given out.
So wrapping up on the ADB, why is this essential knowledge for UPSC aspirants?
Oh, it's fundamental. You need to understand these major international financial institutions, especially how India interacts with them. It helps explain how big infrastructure projects get funded, India's economic ties, and the governance structures of these powerful multilateral bodies. It touches on IR, economics, policy. It's all connected.
Definitely crucial stuff. Great, let's switch gears completely now. From global finance to the microscopic world, but with huge global implications. Phytoplankton.
Yeah, and there's some really interesting new research linking human activity directly to them.
The specific news was that iron released from human activities, things like industrial pollution maybe, is actually boosting spring phytoplankton blooms.
And kind of surprisingly, it's also making them consume nutrients faster. It really shows how our actions ripple through ecosystems, doesn't it?
It does. So let's back up. What exactly are phytoplankton?
They're microscopic plants. Think tiny, single-celled algae floating in the water. Just like plants on land, they have chlorophyll, they need sunlight.
Which means they have to stay near the surface.
Pretty much. They float in the upper part of the ocean, the sunlit zone. And they need nutrients too. Inorganic stuff dissolved in the water, like nitrates, phosphates, sulfur. They use these to build proteins, fats, carbohydrates.
Are they all the same type?
No, the sources mention two main classes. You've got dinoflagellates. They often have a little whip-like tail, a flagella to move around, and sometimes complex shells.
Okay.
And then there are diatoms. They have rigid shells, often made of like tiny glass boxes, really, and they tend to just drift with the currents.
They sound tiny, but their ecological role is massive, right?
Absolutely massive. They are the base, the absolute foundation of the marine food web. Everything from tiny shrimp and snails up to jellyfish and the fish that eat them ultimately depend on phytoplankton.
Wow.
Take them away, and the whole ocean ecosystem collapses.
And the oxygen fact is just staggering.
This is it. The estimate is they produce around 50%, half of all the oxygen on Earth, through photosynthesis.
Half the oxygen we breathe comes from these microscopic ocean plants. That's mind-blowing.
Puts them in perspective, eh? And they're also vital for the global carbon cycle. They soak up huge amounts of CO2 from the atmosphere, just like forests do.
But sometimes, too much of a good thing can be bad, these blooms.
Harmful algal blooms, or HABs. This happens when you get an excess of nutrients, often from pollution, like fertilizer runoff from farms or wastewater discharge.
And you need other conditions too.
Yeah, plenty of sunlight, warm water temperatures, and relatively calm, slow-moving water. When all that lines up, certain phytoplankton species can just explode in number, creating these dense blooms.
And harmful because they can be toxic.
Exactly. Some species produce potent toxins. These can poison fish, shellfish, marine mammals, birds. Even humans can get sick from eating contaminated seafood, or sometimes just from contact with the water.
So understanding phytoplankton is key for environmental science, marine ecology, climate change, pollution studies, biodiversity. It touches so many areas.
Definitely. They're like tiny barometers for the health of our oceans and really our planet.
From the very small to some very cutting edge and sometimes controversial technology. Let's talk about FPV drones, first-person view drones.
Yeah, a topic that's unfortunately become very prominent recently due to conflicts.
The specific news hook was about their use by Ukraine against Russian targets, with reports claiming they destroyed over 40 planes. That's a significant military impact.
It really highlights how these things are changing modern warfare. So FPV drones, they're a type of UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle, but the key difference is the integration of, often, artificial intelligence.
AI. How does that work in these drones?
The AI helps process the real-time video feed. It allows for more advanced stuff than just basic remote control things like autonomous obstacle avoidance or carrying out specific missions like surveillance, search and rescue, or targeted strikes.
And the FPV part, first-person view, what's that like for the operator?
It means the pilot sees exactly what the drone's camera sees live, usually through special goggles, sometimes on a screen. It gives you this incredibly immersive, direct control, allowing for really precise maneuvering, like you're virtually sitting in the drone.
So you're flying by looking through the drone's camera, not at the drone itself.
Precisely. And the sources mentioned they're often used after a longer-range recon drone has already scoped out the area and found targets.
Because the FPV drones themselves don't fly that far?
Generally, no. Their effective range is typically just a few kilometers.
What makes them so effective, then? The sources mentioned cost and deep strike capability.
Those are the big advantages. They're often way cheaper than larger drones or traditional weapons, and their small size, speed, and agility, combined with that FPV control for navigating tricky environments, lets them hit targets that might be hard to reach otherwise. Plus, they're harder to detect.
But it can't be easy to fly them just by looking through the camera. What are the downsides?
The main challenge mentioned is limited situational awareness. You've only got that narrow camera view, right? So the operator can easily lose track of where the drone is overall, its orientation, or obstacles just outside the camera's view. Disorientation is a real risk.
Yeah, I can imagine, like driving a car looking only through a cardboard tube.
Kind of. The source even mentioned that sometimes they need a spotter, someone watching the drone from the ground to give the pilot external context.
Any specific tech features that make them notable?
Yes. A couple of key things. GPS-independent navigation is crucial. It means they can still operate even if GPS signals are jammed, which happens a lot in conflict zones.
How do they navigate without GPS then?
They use something called a smart pilot system. It combines visual data from the camera with inertial sensors, think accelerometers and gyroscopes, to figure out position and movement, visual inertial navigation.
Clever. And LiDAR was mentioned too.
Yeah, LiDAR using lasers to map the surroundings in 3D can be added to boost precision, especially when flying in cluttered spaces like forests or urban areas.
And they're not just for military use.
No, definitely not. That FPV perspective is fantastic for dynamic filming, action sports, cinematic shots, that kind of thing.
So for UPSC, this clearly slots into science and tech, defense tech, AI applications,
Yeah.
but also contemporary warfare tactics and broader security issues. Shows how fast tech is evolving in conflict.
A very current and significant topic.
Okay, let's shift again to an important international organization in the world of travel, ID, the International Air Transport Association.
And the news here is quite prestigious for India.
It is. The Prime Minister recently addressed IATA's 81st annual general meeting and the World Air Transport Summit. And the really notable part, it was held right here in New Delhi at Bharat Mandapam.
That's a big deal. As the source pointed out, the last time India hosted the AGM was way back in 1983, 42 years ago.
Definitely signals India's rising profile in global aviation. So what is IATA fundamentally?
It's the main trade association for the world's airlines. Simple as that. Founded just after World War II, April 19th, 1945, in Havana, Cuba.
And its main purpose? Why do airlines need it?
It's described as the main vehicle for cooperation between airlines, promoting safe, reliable, secure, and economical air travel for consumers globally. It helps airlines work together.
How big is it now?
It's grown massively. It started with 57 airlines from 31 countries. Now it has around 350 members from 120 nations, and together they represent over 80% of all global air traffic.
Wow. And it had a predecessor.
Yeah, it basically took over from the International Air Traffic Association, which was founded even earlier, back in 1919 in The Hague.
All right. And where's the main office?
Montreal, Canada.
What are its stated goals? What does it try to achieve?
The sources list a few key objectives: promoting the growth of international air travel, ensuring collaboration between airlines vital for things like ticketing, baggage handling across different carriers, strengthening safety standards, and creating international rules and regulations for air traffic.
So it's both an industry promoter and a rule setter. For UPSC, this is important for understanding international organizations, the transport sector, India's role on the global stage, and economic cooperation.
And there was that little detail mentioned that SpiceJet was noted as the first Indian airline to join IATA. A nice trivia point.
Good one to remember. Okay, moving from transport back to health, but focusing on a specific, challenging area: rare diseases.
Yeah.
specifically lysosomal storage disorders, or LSDs.
This news really highlights a gap between policy and practice and the human cost involved.
It's quite concerning. The report stated that despite India having a national policy for rare diseases, the NPRD from 2021 and financial aid mechanisms, over 300 patients, mostly children, diagnosed with LSDs are apparently still without the essential medical care they need.
That disconnect is the crux of the issue raised. So what exactly are these lysosomal storage disorders?
They're a group of rare genetic conditions. The basic problem is a harmful buildup of toxic materials inside the body's cells.
And that involves the lysosomes.
Exactly. Lysosomes are like the cell's recycling centers. Little organelles packed with digestive enzymes that break down waste, old cell parts, stuff the cell takes in.
And in LSDs, that breakdown process goes wrong. Precisely. People with LSDs lack certain specific enzymes needed by the lysosomes, or maybe the activators those enzymes need to work. Without the right working enzyme, the body can't break down particular complex molecules, fats, sugars, things like that.
So these molecules just accumulate.
Yes. They build up inside the cells and eventually damage the organs where those cells are located. This buildup is toxic, causes organ dysfunction, leads to serious health problems, disability, and, unfortunately, often shortens lifespan.
How do people get these disorders? Are they inherited?
Most are what's called autosomal recessive, meaning a child has to inherit a faulty gene from both parents to get the disorder. The sources mentioned a couple of exceptions, like Hunter syndrome and Fabry disease, which have different inheritance patterns.
When do symptoms usually appear?
Often very early, during pregnancy or soon after birth. There are some rarer, milder forms that might show up in adulthood, but generally earlier onset means a more severe case.
And is there a cure?
Sadly, no. The sources were clear on that. There are currently no cures for LSDs. Treatment focuses on managing the symptoms and trying to slow down the damage to organs.
This is clearly relevant for UPSC under health, rare diseases, genetic disorders, public health challenges, government policy evaluation like the NPRD, and healthcare access issues.
A sobering reminder of the complexities in healthcare delivery.
Okay, let's shift focus now to the natural world. A specific bird sighting that caused a bit of a stir. The Caspian Gull.
Ah, yes, a bit of biodiversity news. Always interesting.
The news hook was quite specific. A rare migratory Caspian gull was reportedly seen for the very first time ever in Kerala, spotted by an ornithologist down in Kozhikode. So why is this a big deal? A gull in Kerala.
It's a big deal because Kerala is way outside its usual range, especially in India. The Caspian gull is considered one of the rarer gulls to spot, particularly when it strays from its typical areas.
Tell us about the bird itself. What's it like?
It's described as monotypic, no subspecies, and it's a large gull with a distinct white head. For nesting, it likes flat, low-lying ground near water lakes, rivers, reservoirs, often on islands in steppe or semi-desert type landscapes.
And what does it eat?
Mainly fish, but also invertebrates like insects, mollusks, that sort of thing.
Is it easy to identify?
Apparently not. The sources specifically say it's tricky because it looks very similar to another gull, the steppe gull. You'd need to be quite skilled to tell them apart reliably.
Okay, what about migration? Where does it usually live and where does it spend the winter?
Its breeding grounds are typically in Central Asia. In winter, it's known to visit northwestern India. Areas like Gujarat are common spots.
Right.
The general migration route takes them from the Black Sea Caspian Sea region eastward into Kazakhstan and western China. Traditional wintering areas stretch from the eastern Mediterranean across the Persian Gulf and into western India.
But there's a change happening.
Yes, interestingly, the sources noted that more and more seem to be dispersing further north and west into Europe. For the winter, places like Sweden, Norway, Denmark are seeing them more often.
So finding one all the way down in Kerala is definitely unusual, far from its typical Indian wintering zone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why it made the news, a significant deviation from the norm.
And its conservation status. Is it endangered?
No, according to the IUCN Red List, it's currently listed as least concern.
Okay, so this ties into environment, biodiversity, migratory species, zoology, geography, understanding those migration routes, and conservation status reporting.
A nice concrete example of how birdwatching and ornithology contribute to our knowledge of wildlife patterns.
Right, switching gears again back to technology, but this time a major Indian initiative, BharatGen.
This sounds like a pretty significant development for AI in India.
It does. The news is the recent launch of the BharatGen multimodal LLM. It was launched by a union minister at the Phytoplankton summit and is being touted as India's first of its kind.
First of its kind meaning What exactly?
Meaning India's first indigenously developed AI-based, government-funded, multimodal large language model specifically built for Indian languages. Lots of qualifiers there, but important ones. Indigenous and government-funded. Okay. How does it come about?
It was developed under the National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber-Physical Systems, that's NMICPS, and implemented through a specific foundation at IIT Bombay, the TIH Foundation for IoT and IoE.
And the big goal for BharatGen.
The aim is pretty ambitious to revolutionize AI development across India's huge linguistic and cultural diversity.
Sounds like it has solid backing.
Yes, supported by the Department of Science and Technology, DST, and it involves a whole consortium of top academic institutions and experts.
You mentioned multimodal. What does that mean for a language model?
It means it can handle more than just text. BharatGen integrates text, speech, and image inputs and outputs, so it can understand and generate information across these different formats, and critically do it in 22 Indian languages.
22 languages plus images and speech. That sounds incredibly versatile for reaching people across India. What's the expected impact?
The hope is to empower key sectors like healthcare, education, agriculture, and governance. By providing AI solutions that understand regional specifics and languages, the idea is to make AI genuinely useful for every Indian.
How's this being rolled out? Is it just IIT Bombay?
No, it's executed through a network of 25 Technology Innovation Hubs, or TIHs, set up under that NMICPS mission across the country. 4 of these have even been upgraded to Technology Translational Research Parks.
And the NMICPS mission itself has broader goals than just BharatGen.
Yes, BharatGen is a major achievement of the mission, but the mission pillars are technology development, entrepreneurship, developing human resources in these fields, and international collaboration.
What are the standout technical features of BharatGen?
Key things mentioned are being multilingual and multimodal, being trained on specific Parkia datasets reflecting Indian contexts, being an open source platform to encourage wider use, and generally boosting the generative AI research scene in India.
Highly relevant for UPSC. Science and tech, AI, digital India, government schemes like NMICPS, India's linguistic diversity, and how tech applies to different sectors.
A very clear statement of intent regarding India's AI ambitions.
Okay, next up, let's look at an international economic bloc, MERCOSUR.
Right, bringing us back to India's foreign policy and trade relationships.
The news hook here was a statement by India's Prime Minister, made during a visit by the President of Paraguay. They talked about working together to expand the existing Preferential Trade Agreement, the PTA, that India has with the MERCOSUR group.
Shows India is looking to strengthen those economic ties with South America.
So what exactly is MERCOSUR?
It stands for Mercado Común del Sur, the Southern Common Market. It's a major regional economic bloc in South America.
When did it start?
It was officially formed back in 1991 with the signing of the Treaty of Asuncion.
And the main reason for setting it up?
The core idea is economic integration, facilitating the free movement of goods, services, capital, and people among the member countries.
Who were the FIR members?
The original founders were Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Bolivia and Venezuela joined later, although Venezuela's membership has been suspended since late 2016.
Right. And there are associate members, too.
Yes. Several countries like Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, and Suriname are associate members. They participate in some agreements, but aren't part of the full customs union.
Where's the headquarters?
Montevideo in Uruguay.
And official languages?
Spanish and Portuguese, reflecting the main languages of the members.
How is it governed? Who makes the decision?
The top body is the Common Market Council. This is made up of the foreign and economic ministers of the full member states. They coordinate policy.
And how do they decide things?
Decisions are made by consensus among those full members, and the presidency of the council rotates every 6 months between them.
How significant is MERCOSUR on the world stage?
It's pretty significant economically. The sources describe it as the 4th largest integrated market globally, trailing the EU, NAFTA, now USMCA, and ASEAN.
And India's connection, just to reiterate.
India already has a preferential trade agreement, a PTA, with MERCOSUR signed way back in 2004. The current news is about talks to potentially expand that agreement.
So for UPSC, this is international relations, economic groupings, India's foreign policy, trade deals, and South American geography and politics.
Yeah, it fits into India's strategy of engaging with various regional blocs around the world.
Okay, let's loop back to healthcare in India, but this time focusing on a specific research body, the National Center for Disease Informatics and Research, or NCDIR.
And this news offers a really interesting data point about India's primary healthcare system.
It does. The news was about the findings of a study done by ICMR NCDIR, which is based in Bengaluru. The study suggested that public primary health centers, the PHCs, are actually better prepared to handle care for diabetes and hypertension compared to other facilities like sub-centers, community health centers, CHCs, or even sub-district hospitals.
That's quite a specific finding, maybe a bit unexpected, and certainly important for health policy. So what is NCDIR itself?
It's a permanent institute under the Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR.
Yeah.
And ICMR is autonomous, but under the Department of Health Research within the Ministry of Health.
And based in Bengaluru, you said?
Yes, Bengaluru, Karnataka.
What makes it unique, according to the source?
Its unique angle is explicitly using information science informatics as an integral part of its health research. It's really focused on data, was its main job.
The primary objective is to build and maintain a national research database, specifically for major non-communicable diseases: cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and stroke. It uses IT and a national network to conduct research on these major health challenges.
So it's the central hub for NCD data and research in India. How does it help the government?
It works closely with the Ministry of Health and other agencies, providing baseline data and technical help for designing, monitoring, and evaluating NCD control programs and activities.
Does it help other hospitals and clinics too?
Yes, a big part of its role is encouraging and technically supporting other medical institutions, government, NGO, private, to collect data on these diseases using standardized formats, often promoting electronic data capture and networking.
And it develops the tools for this as well.
Absolutely. It plans, innovates, and integrates IT advances to develop health informatics, including creating software for data capture, checking, and analysis.
Okay, so NCDIR is key for UPSC under health, research institutions, government bodies like ICMR, disease surveillance, public health data management, and the huge issue of NCDs in India.
Shows the growing importance of data in tackling health problems.
Right, for our final topic today, let's step back into history and archaeology with some news from Raigad Fort.
A truly iconic site, synonymous with Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj.
Exactly. And the exciting news is from a joint